Welcome to the Heart Path Podcast. I'm your host, Yvonne Ellis. The Heart Path Podcast spotlights authors, changemakers, nature lovers, and creators of all kinds. Each of our podcasts aim to share interviews and stories of beauty, resilience, and inspiration for all. Thank you for listening to the Heart Path Podcast. This week's guest is Rosemerry Wahtola Trommer. Rosemerry is a poet, teacher, speaker, writing facilitator, and poet laureate of Evermore. Her poems have appeared on A Prairie Home Companion, PBS NewsHour, O Magazine, American Life and Poetry, Washington Post Book Club, and Carnegie Hall Stage. Her newest book is The Unfolding, and her one-word mantra is adjust. You can find Rosemerry and her poetry at wordwoman.com.
Intention. To wonder. To wonder with no plan for where it might lead. No strategy for arrival, no finish line, no pot of gold, no perfect score, no striving for. To wonder. To wonder the way a small child might wonder when seeing a roly-poly for the first time. Oh, look at all those legs. Look at how it curls. Look at how it moves again. Feel how light it is in the palm. Feel how it tickles as it moves. Imagine an awareness that new, meeting a life form that old. Can I be that new as I meet this infinite world? To wonder not just with my mind, but with my belly. To let every neuron spark. To notice where there is a channel and imagine the great wing of life is scraping it clean so the stream might flow in new ways. To wonder beyond the edge of the known, and in that spaciousness, play.
I love this poem, and what I really truly love about it is I can't help but think about those moments of time when we're present and actually appreciate the little things, the beauty of living beings around us. And I'm wondering what inspired this poem?
Well, it's a pretty recent one. My friend James Cruz and I were leading a retreat in Vermont, and it was one that I wrote the very first day of our retreat. And it was fun for me to be there. Of course, I love being with James. We had this really fabulous group of 30 other humans, and we were talking about what drives poetry. And very specifically, I think, Yvonne, what thrills me the most about writing, and the reason I return to a blank page is because it's an invitation to wonder every single time, what's here? What could happen now? I always joke that the worst advice ever about writing is write what you know, which must be the absolute most boring thing in the world. I think if you just write what you know. But if we write past what we know, now we're in the realm of wonder. Now epiphany is possible. Now there's this infinite potential. Infinite potential. Anything could happen on that blank page. It's so exciting every single time. What's going to happen this time? So I just love that. Looking at this poem now, I'm remembering just being very excited about how the brain works and really thinking about the neurons and the channels and how the great wing of life is scraping it clean so the stream might flow in new ways. How do I get out of my own way? All the things I think I know. How do we move past the stories that we think we know? The person who we are, the things we think we know about how the world is. Mm-hmm. How have we closed off what's possible? And for me, poetry is this way to reinvigorate our aliveness. So that's where it came from.
Oh my gosh. I love this. Oh, it's so good. And it just made me think about how you're allowing for your poems to come out the way they need to, however that needs to be. And I'm wondering how you do that. What is it that you do to stop the mind from getting in the way of what you need to say on the page?
Oh, well, let's be clear. I get in my own way all the time. Constantly in my own way. And I think that I have a couple of thoughts about this. Something that's been very alive and exciting for me lately is really thinking about the way that we can witness the self as we're doing whatever we're doing. In this case, writing, though.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to say, oh, look, here's where I'm writing, the same thing I've already written, or this is where I want to write one thing because I think it might sound good, but really what I'm feeling is this other thing. This is the way that I wish that I could write this other thing, but in fact, this is what's showing up. Every single time we sit down, we probably invent new ways to get in our own way. And just the gift of being able to witness the self as we are in this process, not vilifying that self, right? Not shaming her or getting angry with her. Oh, haven't you gotten over this yet, Rosemerry? No, I mean, I think that there's been such a sweet evolution of self-compassion, Yvonne, that has evolved through my writing practice where I could be like, oh, look, there she is again. The one who thinks it needs to end this way. Oh, there she is again. The one who thinks it's a problem that she's sitting there without anything else showing up. So I feel like witnessing is probably everything. It's probably everything. And what is that really? But presence. It's just presence.
Yeah.
And take that into our writing practice.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm wondering, when you get out and you are present, how it is that you find wonder. What is the wonder that you find?
Huh. Interesting. I mean, my first thought is, am I finding wonder? I don't know that that's how I would say it. But then how would I say it? So I do think this. I think that wonder is a practice. And I think, like any other practice, the more we feed it, the more it feeds us. It's one of these loops, right? But again, it begins with, I suppose, a longing for it.
Yeah.
And I don't think, Yvonne, that I always had it in my writing. If anything, I think there were years where it was almost non-existent, maybe, where I think I was trying really hard to write something good. And I think in my effort to write something good, I eliminated wonder.
No.
I don't think that I'm wrong saying that. I don't think I'd ever had that thought before, Yvonne, but I'm just kind of picturing, Rosemerry in her 20s, even 30s, and how sincerely I wanted to get it right.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think is probably the way we kill wonder.
Wow.
I was playful, and I think that play is a way into wonder.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the more now I notice, the more playful I can be in every way, not, with form, with subject, with how is this going to end? What if I write 4 endings? That's play.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like, I don't know that I find wonder. I don't know that I would say it that way, but maybe we could say, I want to serve wonder. I notice that when I am in that place of wonder, how everything opens, and I like how that feels. And I think there was a long time when I didn't know how that felt. And now I do know how it feels. And now that I know how it feels, I know when I'm not there, and I can be like, how do I get back there? How do I bring myself back into that practice of what if? I have these series of questions. What else? What if? Yes, and I have 5 little 2-word phrases to keep it from being a tightly shut box.
Yes. I noticed you saying when I open, and it made me think about your poem Opening, which is also a wonder poem. And I would love to hear that as well. Thank you so much for explaining this process.
Yeah. You're helping me think about it too, Yvonne.
Thank you.
A very brief poem that's maybe just from last week or so. Opening. In a forest of light, I am drawn to the shadow and feel how darkness too is an invitation to wonder. No, the shadow is not my home. Neither is the light. The truest home is the wonder.
Mm-hmm.
The truest home is the wonder. Right, I guess that's what I was trying to say earlier. To meet the world that way has its own energy. It has its own aliveness. It has its own aliveness, Yvonne. And that juice, that thrill is what helps me. I'll speak just for myself to meet anything, right? I'm thinking about some of the most difficult times in my life, meeting the death of my son, having that curiosity and wonder in place helped me to stay open in a time when I feel like I could have shut down.
Yeah.
Instead, I felt like I had this kind of ongoing, I mean, still to this day, but profoundly then, what do I feel? What's here? What's happening outside of me? What's happening inside of me? What is this? How do I meet this? Not necessarily even answering those questions, right? But just letting myself be in that state of stunned wonderment.
What's really inspiring me through this conversation is usually I find wonder outside of my home. But what I'm getting from this conversation and from what you've shared so far is it's a state of mind. And it's a state of mind that we can choose to go into inside or out, no matter where we're at. And that's very inspiring to me. So thank you for sharing that. And I was thinking about grief when you were talking about your son, and it made me think about a song that you were singing when my kids got on. And I was wondering, would you want to share that song?
Oh, I wish I could, friend. I'm still learning it. I don't know it enough to share it. But I'm sure I could share another. I feel like this is one of the songs that helped save me after Finn died. And it, I think, is a song about opening. And it is, well, it's not really a song. I made up a tune for a part of a poem by Gregory Orr. And this is just the first half of his poem. Not to make loss beautiful, but to make loss the place where beauty starts, where the heart understands for the first time the nature of its journey. Whoosh! Where the heart understands for the first time the nature of its journey. Right? That, to me, that is the wonderment that we're able to bring to even trauma, right? Even the greatest griefs. To be curious, what is here? How do I meet this?
Yeah. Yeah. And wow. Rosemary, your voice is such a gift and your words are such a gift. Thank you for sharing. My mind is blown right now. I was thinking about how poetry is part of what I would see as your heart and who you are and how you share with the world. And I'm wondering, when did you start writing poetry?
When I was in fourth grade is when I remember writing my first poem. It was in school. It was absolutely awful. It was about the color pink. But I liked it. I liked the play of it. I liked the sound of it. It just made me happy. It was a joyful thing to write a poem, even if it was insipid. And then I started reading Shel Silverstein. I remember reading a poem by Walter de la Mare about a snowflake. And while I was reading that poem, I was sitting in the fifth grade classroom looking out the window into that Wisconsin winter, and it was dumping snow. And it was one of those moments where I didn't understand a word that I was reading really, except I remember the first stanza, "Before I melt, come look at me, this lovely icy filigree." And I didn't know what filigree meant. I just knew I was kind of in love with the word filigree. And I was kind of in love with the musicality of this and that it was in some way touching what I was looking at. So I had that moment of connection. So there was that. And there was also just that thrill of Shel Silverstein writing such silly poems. Mm-hmm. Obviously having a really good time always writing about the underbelly of the world, right? So my way into poetry was play. That was how it all started. And, then I became a teenager and then it was all angst. And then I became a college student. It was all trying to be perfect. It's taking me a long time to get over myself, Yvonne. Let's see. How much farther is there to go?
I think that the perfectionist is just the human plight, but why not just try and see what happens? And
why not just try? Why not just play? I mean, really, the stakes are so low, honestly, for you to sit down and write a poem. The stakes are really pretty low. Except that they're so high. And I think that's maybe part of it too, is that I think that we also understand, I'll speak for myself. I understand each time I sit down, this is an invitation to touch the truth. Mm-hmm. And that is actually an enormous invitation. And the stakes of that are actually so high, right? Am I willing to be curious about what matters most? Am I really willing to see what's here? Am I really willing to write something down and think, oh, no, not that at all? And be confronted by the things I think I know, and then be confronted by thinking, oh, maybe not. It is really freaking brave to sit down to a blank page. It is a very courageous thing because we don't know what's going to come up. And sometimes what comes up can terrify us.
That's something that I heard Ellen Bass say, which is let the mosquitoes in. So allowing for our poetry or whatever we're writing to just be what it's going to be and not self-editing to the point to where we can't even get a message out. I love how you do that and you just move through it. So what do you do when you get to that point where you don't know if you want to continue with the truth or not? How do you?
Oh, yeah. Yvonne, my practice is not only to write a poem every day, but to share it every day. And those are two very different practices. So to share the poem is a courageous act. But sometimes when I'm sitting down and I'm like, oh, that's what this is about, I don't force myself to go there. Sometimes I will. But if I'm like, nope, no, not ready. Okay, not ready.
Oh, yeah.
I think, like I said earlier, I just feel like this practice gets increasingly gentle. The more naked it gets, the more gentle it gets. By that, I mean, the more I'm able to be gentle with myself, with wherever it's at. Mm-hmm. Right. That doesn't mean necessarily that the writing itself is gentle, but that I can be gentle with myself for whatever is showing up. Oh, of course, that's what's here. I feel like that's my inner voice, right? Oh, that's what's here. Oh, of course you don't want to write that.
Mhm.
Well, okay, then write something else. I will write something. I know that every day, right? And if I don't write it today, maybe tomorrow, maybe in 3 weeks, who knows? Maybe next year, maybe I'll never write it.
I love that allowing process. It's just beautiful that you allow yourself to do whatever feels right to you in the moment. And however that is the way it's going to be. And I think self compassion is just such a gift to be compassionate with ourselves. And when we're compassionate with ourselves, it's so much easier for us to be compassionate with each other and with Earth and all living beings that are around us. It just pours out of us when we can do that for ourselves. And so I love that you're doing that with
Yeah.
your practice.
Yeah. I definitely noticed that it started with the page, and then I noticed it kind of coming out into other parts of my life too, where I was able to be much more generous. Oh, you broke your foot, sweetheart. I didn't have to beat myself up about it. I could just be like, yeah, that's a bummer. I think an older version of me might have berated me. You fell on a street? What the hell? You idiot.
Yeah.
Oh, it's gotten easier and easier to just be a little more gentle. I think that might just be an aging thing too, Yvonne. I don't know. Maybe I had to be so hard on myself all those years to finally be able to soften. I don't know.
Well, thank you for being compassionate to yourself now. Yeah. Did anyone inspire you to write poetry when you were in grade school? Were there teachers or family members or friends?
This is one of my favorite stories. When I was in junior high, I was raised as an Episcopalian, and I came to the confirmation class in a state of ecstasy. And I told Father Blakesley, he was like, what's up, Rosemary? And I was like, look at this word. And I wrote the word sometimes on the chalkboard. And I said, look, there's an S on each end, and then a vowel. And then if you come in, there's an M, and there's this beautiful T in the middle that's so straight and symmetrical. And the whole word just had this gorgeous symmetry to it that I could not believe. I was over the moon about it. So for my confirmation, Father Blakesley got me a book of E. Cummings, 73 poems, which really advanced me. Before that, I think the poems I was writing were very playful, but they were playful and silly. And then I was able to read E. Cummings, who was exceptionally playful, yet looking at betrayal and the choices that we make. And I was like, what? Whoa, what's happening here? This is what's possible. I think him seeing that delight that I had and then offering that book, it opened up a whole new world, and I felt so seen.
Oh, I love that.
I am. Yeah. Thank you, Father Blakesley.
Yes. There's good people in our lives that inspire us and actually see us and care about us. It's such a gift. Thank you for sharing that. Yes. Wonderful. I read that your motto is adjust. What do you mean by that?
So this came to me through my friend Jude Jordan Kalush, and this is probably at least 20 years ago. She was running a poetry festival in Salida. I was on the board for it and go perform and play, and it was wonderful and fun. And Jude had this habit of walking out into the woods and talking to the trees. And then there was a big drought. And in this drought, she went out one day and she threw up her hands and she said, "What are we going to do?" And the trees said, "Adjust."
Woof.
She heard them. I don't doubt that she did. And when I heard that, my body went off like a tuning fork, and I thought, I want to align with that. And after that, I did some research and learned that it comes from the same Proto-Indo-European root as our word for yoke. So this idea of adjust is basically to yoke yourself to the present, like an oxen would, right? Not like an egg yolk, but like an oxen yoke. How do we tether ourselves to what is?
Yeah.
And this is such a profound influence on me, this whole idea of yes to the world as it is instead of the way I wish it would be. And I feel like adjust, it's that invitation. By the way, also same root as yoga. But just this idea that if you don't like the way it is, it's not going to do any good to pretend it's any other way.
Yeah.
How do you meet this world? How do you change yourself to meet the world as it is instead of fighting it?
Yeah. Do you have any advice for our listeners of how they can use that motto these days?
Infinite chances to practice. I guess, Yvonne, what I notice myself is that when I am in argument with the world, I have this building resistance in me. I feel it, right? It's an energetic quality. I'm sure everybody listening knows what it's like to hear something or read something or see something and think, no. And that word, that no, is the indicator that I am in resistance to the world as it is. And that's the invitation to adjust. Here's an old example. It stands out to me because it was so ludicrous. My husband and I owned a big old fruit orchard for 6 years. And one July, just as we were about to pick cherries, there was a hailstorm. And that hailstorm, which came and went in less than a minute, it destroyed the entire cherry crop. And I remember when I heard the hail hitting the roof, I ran out into the hail and I shouted, "No!" Yvonne, did that do any good? It did not. Did it stop the hail from coming? No. Did it stop those cherries from being destroyed? No. And so what are you going to do? Are you going to shout no, or are you going to find a way to meet what's here, right? The disappointment, the sadness, the anger, the exhaustion. No, you adjust to the world as it is. You say, okay, this is the way it is. And the moment we say, yes, this is what is really happening, now everything is possible. Right? Now we have the chance to show up in the world in any way. There's like an immediate relief that happens in my body when I'm like, okay, this is what it is. Like I've just stopped arguing with life. And now what? How do I show up now?
Yeah, it sounds like acceptance, a way of accepting what is happening around us and knowing that we may not be able to control what's happening around us, but we can control how we react to it, knowing that it is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Rosemerry, I read that you have been a poet laureate more than once. As a poet laureate, where have you gone? What's your favorite thing to do as a poet laureate?
Poet laureate sounds very fancy, doesn't it? So the first time I was a poet laureate was for San Miguel County. And the irony of it, Yvonne, was that I had been working my butt off for poetry events. I'd been the director of the Telluride Writers Guild at that time for 10 years. And I had put on 2 festivals every year and 2 contests every year and had writers in the schools every month. I had gone crazy, just gave myself to this organization in the biggest way. And then I became poet laureate, and I think my daughter was born that year. And that was the year that I stopped and I basically did nothing. I had children in an orchard. Like, I was not doing a darn thing as a poet laureate. So it felt like it was a gratefulness for work that I had done in the past, but there was nothing I had to give to it at that time. Then when I became Western Slope Poet Laureate, I had the most fun project where I partnered with an online newspaper. They created a map for me of Western Colorado, and I contacted people, poets all across the Western Slope of Colorado, and I asked them, send me a picture of your backyard, send me 1 or 2 poems and your bio. And then every week I would have a new one, and they would pin them on the map. And you could look at that map and find a poet and find a picture of their yard and the poems they'd written and who they were. And it was just a very sweet way to know a landscape. So that was a really fun project. And now, as the Poet Laureate for Evermore, which I have been for a little over a year, they are a bereavement organization that help with legislation, but they have all kinds of other programs, offerings, and resources for people who are grieving. And so, as their Poet Laureate, part of what I do is I lead writing workshops 4 to 6 times a year for them. And I do special projects for them. Like, I create videos that they can put on their social media or use in their training for people around bereavement.
Wow. You've done some amazing work in this world, Rosemerry. I was wondering if you may want to share what you do with poetry that focuses on bereavement and grief. And if there's anything that we can share with our listeners about what steps they may be able to take in processing grief.
Well, I'll begin maybe just by saying it's so different for everyone. But everyone is going to do this their own way. And by this, I mean surviving. Sometimes it's all you can do to get out of bed or walk to your car. I mean, it's different for everyone. For me, writing has been a really important part of being able to continue to show up and feel into the word of the day, my aliveness. I didn't write at all for 7 weeks after Finn died, my son. I just wanted to experience life without trying to contain it. Writing sometimes can diminish things. Sometimes language, period, feels like it can diminish things. It's not the paradox. It can open everything up for us, but it also can feel like it takes something enormous, and in trying to explain it, we somehow make it small. And I think I was having feelings so big that it felt like a disservice to try to write them. So, is it the right time for you to write? Is that really in service to you right now? And then the next thought I have is that after I did start to write, part of what helped me a lot was to write using metaphor. Today, grief is, and I would just explore what was happening with grief. I also realized that to write about grief is really 2 kinds of poems. There are poems about our relationship with grief and poems about our relationship with the person who we're grieving. Not just a person, of course, there's all kinds of grief. There's ancestral grief, there's grief for our planet, there's so many kinds of grief. But very specifically for me, when I wrote poems about grief itself, I could see, oh, wow, it changes a lot. One day it feels oppressive, and the next day it feels like a portal. It could be very different. And in writing poems about my son, I realized that writing is a way for us to still connect with that person and to perhaps remember them, writing about things that they did or said or things that we remember. The way I'd like to think about it is, if it were a memory, what do I know now that I didn't know then? Or what does that moment have to offer me now? And in that way, allowing the past and the present to both be in the poem, and the poem itself being a bridge between what was in the past and what is happening now. Because I do think there's a value to staying very present with loss. And then continue that love, right? I noticed that when I write letters to Finn, I didn't know before that love could continue to grow after someone died. And now I know that. And poetry has been part of that for me.
I love that you write letters to Finn. Thank you for sharing all of this and your process and the way you're moving through grief. Yeah. And I would love if we could share a poem from your new book, Unfolding, if that's possible.
You bet. You bet. This one ties in our conversation about going out into the natural world with wonder, wondering about our inner world, and it's also about grief. So this is called Self-Portrait as Wetlands. After years, grief now grows in me as honestly as sedges flourish at the edges of the marsh, as necessary and benign as fresh water, as generous as the incense of rain. I would not wish grief away any more than I would wish away the blue heron, which is to say, I now see grief as an essential part of my biome. How without it, other parts of me would perish. How vital to be saturated by tears, to not resist the floods of loss. Grief nourishes what is here, the self ever unfinished, life still looking for its shape. Yeah.
Yeah.
Grief nourishes what is here, the self ever unfinished, life still looking for its shape. That just feels like it's so much of what we've been talking about, right? Just that infinite potential when we say yes to life as it is, how everything opens for us and continues to open and open and open.
Unlimited possibilities is exactly what I'm looking for right now. I want for this world to be limitless. I know we have plenty of limits already, but maybe the more we adjust the limits in our mind, we can open up to what surrounds us.
I totally believe that too, Yvonne. I do believe that. Things I thought could never happen have happened, right? The things that we tell ourselves, no, not this. And then this, right? And I suppose that could be about silly things, right? I'll never drink coffee. And then you do. But I think other things too, you know, I could never be okay with crying in front of another person. Well, now I am, right? I think about my own trajectory as a writer and how deeply I used to want to only write a pretty poem. I just wanted to write pretty poems. I was just pissed that people thought there had to be a bunch of grit in there. Well, yeah. You know why? Because life is full of grit. And a poem, all it wants to do is reflect what it means to be alive. Mm-hmm. So if a poem is going to be worth anything at all, then it's going to need some grit.
Yeah.
And to trust that, right? I just think the more we learn how to trust that life itself is going to rise up and continue, because it does. How do we align ourselves with that?
Let's do it. Let's align ourselves. Let's
adjust. That's it, right? That's the whole essence of adjust. How do I align myself with life as it is? Yeah, with the truth, with what is.
Yes. And the way I've been doing that lately is by trying to be grateful, by trying to flip every kind of worry, any kind of fear into something I'm thankful or I'm grateful for right now. in this moment. And I am so grateful to have this conversation with you today and share this time with you and be here with you. Thank you, Rosemerry.
Thank you, Yvonne.